welcome to something special. Welcome to TEDx. This TEDx event is part of a global conversation that takes place every day in every corner of the world. In schools, in theaters, in workplaces, even in prisons, people gather to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. More than 3,000 TEDx events are held every year in 170 countries. It's a remarkable thing. TEDx events are self-organized under a license from TED, a non-profit organization devoted to discovering and sharing powerful ideas in the form of TED Talks. It's not TED itself, but your local TEDx team of volunteers that has done all the work to put on today's event, including booking all of the speakers. It's this team's ideas, dedication, and time that have made this possible. We really hope today's program sparks an exciting conversation. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you will take out. And now, on with the show.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the annual TEDx event. This is Danny.
And this is Toby.
And we're your tonight's TEDx hosts. I thought we were dressing casual, but I must have missed the dress code. This year, we are really excited to listen to everyone's different point of views on the theme of chain reactions. However, before we begin, there are a quick few announcements to ensure that you, the audience, and the speakers have a fantastic time tonight. Halfway through the event, there'll be a quick 15-minute intermission with food and drinks.
In addition, we'll be having some live music at halftime from a band called The Other Guys. But most importantly, to make sure that our speakers are respected, we want everyone to make sure that their phones are set on silent. But now, let's give Sam a chain reaction of applause, who's going to be presenting about history. But not any type of history, all of history. But obviously, I'll let Sam tell you more.
Good evening, everybody. Before I begin, I want to warn you all of two things. First of all, if you don't like science, then plug in your headphones or take an intermission, because at times I might get a little bit carried away by the science of this talk. But don't worry, I spared a lot of the detail. Secondly, a lot of what I'm going to talk about is theory. To clarify for those who don't know, theory is not synonymous with guesswork. My theory that the moon is made out of magnesium, aluminium, silicon, oxygen, amongst others, is not the same as your theory that it's made out of cheese. My theory is supported by evidence, as will all of the theories I talk about tonight will be. But that doesn't mean all of them are correct, or will stay correct. The great thing about science is that as we learn more, we add those corrections to our theories to improve. But basically the upshot of this is, if you don't come up to me after this talk, oh, well, I actually didn't believe any of that, the earth is flat, evolution never happened, yada yada. I don't care. Anyways, safety briefing aside, today I want to talk to you about history. Not just any history, real history. Not the boring history that you do in class with your teachers, all kings and queens, wars and revolutions that happened hundreds and thousands of years ago. No, I'm going to start 13.8 billion years ago, and I'm going to take you through the entire history of the universe up until now. To do so, I'm going to use a metaphor. I know people regularly travel home on the weekends to Vienna, and so I've decided to model the entire history of the universe on the 3-hour and 11-minute journey from the school gates to the house in Vienna. And so we begin with the start of the universe represented as St. Gilgen's Gates and the present day represented by the house of Vienna. And so we begin on a Friday lunchtime with a contrived excuse to Mr. Crew about why we're leaving early. Or 13.8 billion years ago with nothing. or maybe something. We don't actually know. A lot of people tend to fill this area with a god or some sort of omniscient being. But for me, I'm uncertain. For once, I don't know what to think. But just because my brain can't understand it, it doesn't mean nothing ever existed. Anyways, I'm going to brush over this. As Mr. Cruz's words, make sure you're back before curfew on Sunday evening, ring in my ears. Now, finally ready to leave, as you begin to think of taking your first steps out of the school gates, out of nothing, or whatever there was before, came something. For a fraction of a second, the universe expanded at speeds faster than the speed of light. This sudden expansion is known as cosmic inflation, and it is used to explain a couple of issues of the universe. First of all, the almost uniform distribution of heat, and second of all, the lack of curvature. The universe is surprisingly flat. Physicists would expect that because matter bends space-time, obviously, that the universe would be curved. However, it isn't, and it's because the very presence of an inflation field causes the Earth to become round, the universe to lose its curvature. For the similar reasons that the Earth doesn't seem round when we're on it. When you take something round and expand it to such great sizes, it loses its appearance of curvature. Just like you standing on a basketball might seem round, but a basketball the size of the world doesn't. If this doesn't make any sense to you, that's fine. Flat earthers have struggled with it for centuries. And it just seems purely illogical, but it works in theory. And at the moment, it is the best theory we have for the universe pre-Big Bang. Anyways, when cosmic inflation ended, the energy that was driving it was released as light and matter in what has become known as the Big Bang. Within a second after the Big Bang, the universe was just a bunch of somethings at 10 billion degrees Celsius. And then, nothing. Darkness. Just like that, the lights went out. It was as if someone was watching, they'd think that it was all gone. The journey had ended before it had even started. It hadn't. It wasn't. The darkness in the universe was caused by loose electrons scattering light, giving the appearance of darkness. However, in the darkness, the universe was very much still alive. Collisions between protons and neutrons, through the process of nuclear synthesis, made ions of hydrogen, helium, and some lithium and beryllium. At this point in our journey, we haven't even left the school gates. Right, fast forward through 380,000 years of darkness and collisions. At this point of the journey, we're loading luggage into the car. It looks like we're going to leave soon, if only the lights would come back on. The universe is cooled. We're in a period of time known as the epoch of recombination, in which, and this era meant two important things. The universe lost its electron cloud, allowing light to travel long distances, and it also meant the formation of the first complete atoms. This caused an initial emission of light, known as cosmic background radiation, which is still detectable today. However, light in the universe was short-lived, as shortly after, the universe would become dark again, for which it would remain for the next 2 million years. We finally left the school. It's a miracle. We left St. Gilgen behind. The tunes are on, the windows are down, there's an open road ahead. At this point, we're now 200 to 400 million years after the Big Bang. Gas is clumping together to form larger objects, and as they do, their gravitational fields grow and they attract more matter. The denser they become, the hotter their centers become. We're witnessing the formation of the first stars. Containing only hydrogen and helium, these stars grow and gain cores with temperatures hot enough to fuel the process of nuclear fusion. Elements combining with bigger elements to make bigger elements, and releasing huge amounts of energy as a side product. These first stars are massive, up to 300 times the size of the Sun, and surrounded by thick clouds of gas and dust that make any of the light escaping impossible to see. These first stars are symbolic of a more dramatic and larger structural epoch that the universe would enter in the next several billion years. The universe is beginning to take shape. Denser regions of matter are attracting to one another to form and continue to form stars, nebulas, and all of the modern-day celestial objects we see today. such as our own galaxy, the Milky Way. The Milky Way began to form 13 billion years ago. Initially just chunks of stars and dark matter, it would continue to expand and expand until one day it would become the home for our home. It would be a couple more billion years till that happened. In one instance, from the interstellar dust and gas came a young star by the name of the Sun, and with it, the Earth. We are now 193 out of 283 kilometers into our journey to Vienna, having just passed the small but beautiful town of Pocklarn, home to 3,942 people and birthplace of painter and writer Oskar Kokoschka. We're past halfway now. And so it is that 4.6 billion years ago, the Earth, the Sun, and our solar system began to form. We better wind up the windows as interstellar dust and gas are beginning to gather around our young forming Sun. This gathering of materials makes a protoplanetary disk of leftover materials, which through hundreds and hundreds of collisions create relatively small objects known as planetesimals. These planetesimals are 10 to hundreds of miles across and are essentially chunks of planet, which at any moment will come together to form an actual planet, which is exactly what happened. Through collisions caused by the gravitational pull of these planetesimals, the planetesimals came together to form a small Mars-sized planet. And then through one more collision, they would come together with a similar Mars-sized planet. They would come together to form the Earth as we know it. It is also thought that the Moon was formed as a remnant of this collision, but theories do differ, and none of the serious ones involve cheese. There are arguments that the Moon just broke away from the Earth, or that it was a stray that the Earth took under its wings, or that it just happened to form at the same time in the same area. But the most accepted theory is that it was formed as a remnant of this collision. Okay, great. Let's just take a moment and pause and reflect. Think, I've just gone through 9.2 billion years of history and 60% of our journey to Vienna, and there's still no mention of plants, animals, and nothing about humans yet. So let's take a step back from the history of the universe and take a step into the history of the Earth, and pretty much our story and where we came from. Unfortunately for me, this means leaving behind all the lovely and beautiful and sexy physics, and instead focusing on some rather dull biology. Which hurts me. And so if there's any biologists out here tonight, then just know, when you complain all about my theories, that I don't want to be talking about this. I'd much rather be talking about physics. Anyway, we will start again 2.4 billion years ago, 83% through our car ride to Vienna, having just passed St. Pölten some 10 kilometers ago. This marks the evolution of cyanobacteria, the Earth's first photosynthesizers. Although life had been detected to have evolved some 1.3 billion years earlier, the Earth's atmosphere was devoid of oxygen and high in methane, making it uninhabitable for anything else other than these early microbes. However, the first cyanobacteria, through the process of photosynthesis, which if you don't know, is the conversion of carbon dioxide and water into oxygen, sugar and energy, led to the Great Oxidation Event. This initial pulse of oxygen caused an environment in which life could thrive. However, unfortunately, it was short-lived, as the oxygen levels would stabilize for the next couple billion years at lower levels, making the ocean uninhabitable for life. However, life found a way. Life does always find a way. Multicellular life forms began to form from small microbes living in other microbes, providing specialized functions so that the two could coexist. This provided the grounds for the formation of DNA centralized inside of the central nucleus, which would in turn provide the grounds for the formation of the first eukaryotic cells, which in turn would provide the stepping stones for the formation of the first specialized cells, which exist as a system of cells providing specialized functions so that they could all mutually benefit from one another. All of these were important steps for another major milestone that happened roughly 800 million years ago, the first animals. 94% of the way through to Vienna now, We've just entered the suburbs, and only now are we talking about the first animals. But it wasn't just any animal that came along first. No, the first animal to come along was sponges. Look how far they've come from the first animals to being made into kitchen cleaning utensils. Well, not really. We don't even use sponges anymore. We use cellulose and plastic. Talk about fall from grace. Anyways, I digress. By about 580 million years ago, we entered the Ediacaran period, the earliest known period of complex organisms. Lots of sea floor creatures existed alongside the sponges, but then suddenly, they all died out about 541 million years ago. This led to oxygen levels to rise and the environment to change in an upheaval which would be monumental for human history. 500-ish million years ago, there was an explosion of new life forms. Animals with hard body parts, such as shells, and animals with unique hunting styles and ways of chasing prey. This period is known as the Cambrian period, and it represents a time for an explosion of new life forms that would inevitably lead to our own creation. However, we are 97% of the way through to Vienna, and as we begin to turn our minds to the Wiener Schnitzel dinner we're going to have tonight, we're still millions of years away from actually having humans on Earth. So when do we come in? Well, if we skip through 480 million years of natural history, then we come to 6 million years ago, when our earliest known ancestor, Sahelanthropus, another incredibly difficult science word to both pronounce and spell, began to evolve from its ape-like counterparts. We, as you would recognise us now, wouldn't arrive till 5 million years later, as we are metaphorically just pulling into our road, evolving from some ancestor 650,000 years ago in Africa. But our ancestors would develop traits in that time, which would influence our behaviour very heavily. 3.3 million years ago, for instance, our ancestors began to use stone tools. And then 1.57 million years ago, they began to use chunky hand axes and stone and cutting tools, which would remain in fashion for the next 1.5 million years. It is very difficult to know with a lot of certainty how human history progressed, as finding bones is incredibly difficult and unreliable, as rarely do the conditions exist for their preservation. Yet we know a lot based on genomes and gene research of our predecessors and ancestors. For instance, it is known with reasonable certainty that the human genome arose from Africa, and more specifically, to humans who left Africa some 50 to 60,000 years ago. And so, as we are walking to our Vienna doorway with our latest iPhone model, our ancestors are leaving Africa and spreading across the world with their latest hand axes. We are 99.6% through our journey to Vienna now, close to the Natural History Museum of Vienna, ironically, and our ancestors are only just leaving Africa. For a long time in our history, we lived homogeneously in our Vienna apartment block with our other human ancestors, such as Homo floresiensis, the Neanderthals, and the Denisovans, who we know near nothing about and who have never been round for dinner. But at some point, all of the neighbours disappeared, and we, the humans, remained, although they left their mark. Neanderthal DNA traces remain in modern human DNA, and Denisovans contribute 4% of Asian DNA. Yet regardless, and for whatever reason, probably worthy of another TEDx talk and another laboured analogy of a journey across Europe, Homo sapiens at some point came out on top. So now we've reached home. After a long and exhausting journey, we've finally reached the end and the present day. Of course, I've excluded years of wars and technological advancements which really define us as modern humans. But that's fine. All that history is boring. I've given you the real history. The rest doesn't matter. That's your history job to do, not mine. If I had enough time, I'd take you to the real end of the journey. Often to a not too distant future, I'll talk about how the Milky Way will collide with Andromeda, ending the galaxy as we know it, but entering a new era for both galaxies. I'd mention how the sun will soon engulf the Earth as it grows into a red giant, and then how perhaps, after sitting as a white dwarf or exploding off as a supernova, all stars will end up as black holes, eating up all of the material in the universe until the last black hole emits its last piece of Hawking radiation. We'll talk about being left with nothing, the universe just ceasing to exist. Or perhaps it would happen differently. The universe might tear apart in a big rip, or fall back in itself in a big crunch, or expand so much that one day it truly won't matter. We really all will be all alone. But let's not go there. Let's just enjoy the company of our family, as we've just made the long and exhausting trip home. Don't worry about all that end of the universe stuff. That's an existential crisis for another time. Give your family a hug, and leave that to the physicists to worry about. Thank you very much for listening.